This was an exciting week for economic news. India has found its first valuable stack of lithium, the critical mineral needed to allow India to move towards energy transition using lithium. People also got very interested in another piece of news, transfer pricing. From business pages, the word suddenly was now prime time news. But also, there were other mundane economic news. Inflation going up, exports going down, not too much, but still there. Amid all of these, there was one piece of news that really didn't make to the top of the pages, but that I consider is a very significant piece of development. Europe has decided to step back in a spat with India over who audits India's money market entities. Read it with another news that got traction this week. India and Singapore have linked their online payment systems.
Now, the Pay Now UPI linkage will also provide customers of participating banks and non-bank financial institutions in Singapore and India with a swift and cost-effective way to transfer funds directly from one another's bank accounts.
Why do I call it a big news? Because remember last year, SWIFT, the mechanism which Europe froze for Russia, and as a result, Russia was taken out of the entire architecture of financial markets. India's regulator RBI is saying, I will decide who sets the rules if an Indian wants to transfer money to his uncle in London. I wish I had such a money, but assuming those. Or let's say there is money coming to Indian markets from London, Paris or Luxembourg. RBI will set the rule. It is this that we shall explore in this edition of On Point. Often people don't realize in economic wars, the guns, the howitzers are not about the wads of currency. Words like convertibility. Those are important, mind you. But the big word or the big differential or the big ammunition is the standards. Who sets the standards? Everything else follows from there. And this is something on which money markets, financial markets are extremely leery, because whoever sets the standards gets the maximum flow of money into their market. The European Securities and Markets Authority had said last year that no Indian clearing corporations will be recognized by it because no cooperation agreement could be signed between ESMA and the RBI, the SEBI or the newly set up IFSC authority in India. Now what does that mean? It would have meant that any bank from Europe under the regulatory purview of ESMA coming to India to offer any business like say an M&A business, writing a major debt, would have to provide its own capital. The RBI and the SEBI officials blame ESMA for not having been able to move on the non-cooperation agreement. Now what is their objection? Their objection is that signing those clauses will dilute India's sovereign authority on the markets. Now remember, sovereign power comes along in financial sectors depending on how powerful you are as an economy, how powerful is your financial markets. Now what are clearing corporations? They are something like insurers. Now they essentially, just imagine a market for any financial goods where there are buyers and sellers. What the clearing corporations do is that they stand between both. So they are a buyer to the seller and a seller to the buyer, essentially creating a counterparty arrangement which takes away the risk from both the buyers and the sellers to ensure that the market keeps on working seamlessly. Supposing if this arrangement wasn't there, then what would happen? Well, what would happen is that every time a bank or a major company wanted to enter a financial market to take out a big loan or to make any other arrangement, financial securities that it wanted to buy or to sell, it would have to also set apart a capital for every transaction, and that makes it costly. Now, to play that role, as I said, clearing companies keep an adequate reserve, but also they are, and this is a critical part, audited and audited at a very intense level by the regulators. In this case, both RBI and the SEBI. SEBI does it for almost all the other for all markets. RBI does it for the money market entities. So there is the Clearing Corporation of India, there is the NSE Clearing Corporation, and so on. So these clearing corporations, as I said, they work in both the stock markets, they work in the debt markets. India is very comfortable that these companies are gaining strength. They have developed the ability to act as counterparty to all sorts of trade. At this stage, ESMA has said, no, that is fine, but since you are integrating with the global financial market, we want to have the right to be able to audit these companies. And one of the things that I have said is, you also have to take membership at a price about 50,000 euro to become a part of the ESMA clearing system and allow us to audit you. Now look at what's happening globally. India is trying very, very significantly to make its play in the global financial architecture to set up a financial market, an international financial center. Now there are lots of things that go into it, and one of the major things that go into it is the standards. Because if it is an Indian standard, then a company from wherever will have to then follow the Indian standards, and to that extent Indian market authorities will have the power and the ability to offer a lot more of fungibility. It comes with the turf, and remember, I said this is the most significant element that creates a financial market. Remember, about a decade ago and even earlier, there used to be a lot of noise in the Indian financial press about a topic or a name called P notes, participatory notes. What are these notes? Well, it simply is a mechanism through which an entity, say a hedge fund or a pension fund or anybody else, family offices in many countries, which do not want to invest directly into markets abroad. Instead, they approach banks in their own country, and by that we basically mean the banks in New York or banks in London, which issue these participatory notes to these companies, these entities, and that money is then invested in Indian market. So technically, even though the money is coming into India, the money doesn't belong to the company, say JP Morgan, Jardine Fleming, Goldman Sachs. Instead, it is actually held by somebody else. And there was a lot of dispute in India about whether the money was really coming from abroad or whether there was a round tripping. At the core of it, this problem was one of setting standards. What will be the rules under which P notes will come into India? Recently, in this budget 2023, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has authorized issuing of P notes by Indian banks which set up shop at IFSCA, the gift city.
Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, in her Feb 1 budget speech, had announced the recognition of offshore derivative instruments as valid contracts which can be traded in the gift city, which is the international financial hub.
And in this gift city, they will be able to issue P notes just as others were issuing it. Again, as I said, this would need India to be able to have its own standards. So to return to our ESMA story, the European regulator wants these clearing corporations, whether in Mumbai or coming up in Gift City, to play by the European standards. RBI has said no. What have the European banks said instead? Well, they have approached ESMA 2 is say that please postpone this face off by 2 years. Essentially, the negotiations with RBI and SEBI should continue for another 2 years while things are settled. It essentially means make your request a dead letter. This is very significant. Now look at this check. Every element in this check, the MICR, the signature pattern, the words in those check, each one does not appear randomly. They are set by the standards, certain standards, and these standards have been set by the powerful banking nations of the West. Look at this BHIM app. Each one of the standards here has been set by India. BHIM app, all of the issues, all of the things that it allows for, all the mechanism has been set by Indian regulatory framework. The check is an instrument from the past. The BHIM app is an instrument of the future. The entire UPI network is a series of standards. As I said, in economic warfare, standards matter. So whether BHIM will become international or whether Rupee will get to be an internationally traded currency, it all depends on who will set the standards. That is why it is a big deal that a financial capital like Singapore is linking its payment gateways with India's standards.
India is a significant market for Singapore fintech companies, while Singapore, which is a global fintech hub, can be a gateway for India to enter the Southeast Asian market.
This is why the ESMA fight was a big one. It is the first time in a financial market face-off where India has held its ground. Not 1 rupee or dollar of investment was made, but the rules of engagement got set. As I said, in this fight, the winner takes all. And that's all in this edition of On Point.